It's about that time of year again where you're left thinking, damn, can't afford it, or do I really need to buy that? And of course, I'm referencing smartphone upgrade cycles, especially with all the Android phones coming out this October. And in light of the Mate 20 Pro launch today, I thought we'd take a look back on last year's Mate 10 Pro and see if it's still worth your money throughout this year and the next. Alright, so jumping right in with design, I would describe simply the Mate 10 Pro has a unique and premium feel. It sports a glossy, distinctly blue body with a mirror glass back, and overall it really has a nice feel in the hand. I really do appreciate the symmetry in the back with the perfectly placed fingerprint sensor and the symmetrical camera and flash elements, just something that I like to see. And for a phone that looks incredibly slippery, it isn't because of its angular sides, and I mean they include a case anyway, so you won't have to worry about dropping it too much in the long run. Another aspect of this device that I appreciate is the fact that it retains a larger aspect ratio display, specifically 18:9, without a notch. Another aspect where this phone shines is audio. It sports stereo speakers, which aren't like the best I've ever heard, but I mean, they're really nice and they're better than anything downfiring that I've heard, especially from my OnePlus. So whatever you're doing, playing music, playing games, or watching video, you will most definitely be satisfied with what this phone has to offer. And on top of that, they include really bomb-ass headphones in the box. They're USB-C, and I mean, they sound really bassy and crystal clear. I mean, on par with Apple's Lightning headphones, if not better. Next up with display, I mean, it's not that exciting here, kind of boring for 2018 standard, but hey, boring is better than ugly. Anyway, this display is 18:9 and sports a resolution of 2160 by 1080. It's OLED, it's vibrant, it looks great. What can I say? It's a pretty standard, great display. It's great for consuming media, YouTube, playing games, especially with those stereo speakers that I mentioned. And yeah, I mean, overall, I really don't have any complaints about it. Except one thing, and it doesn't have to do with hardware, it's more a software issue. The scaling is just a little bit weird. It's just like there's like a small, a standard, and a large setting, and neither of them are perfect. I find the small setting way too small, the large setting way too big, and unfortunately, the standard setting is not just right. It's a little too big for my taste, but hey, I don't think it's a negative deciding factor, and it doesn't really take away from the experience you get using this phone. Next, let's talk about battery life, and this is an aspect that I really can't complain about. I mean, it's very similar to my very well-performing OnePlus 6, perhaps a bit better because it sports an impressive 4,000 milliamp hour battery, and at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter because you've got supercharging, which is very impressive. You just plug it in and it's already charged to, halfway in half an hour, all the way maybe an hour, hour and a half, very similar to dash charging in that regard. So yeah, this phone can get you through an entire day, absolutely no problem, and a bit into the next if you have moderate to mild usage. All right, next up, let's talk about a very important aspect of a smartphone, and that is camera. And this is often a differentiating factor when trying to figure out which phone is right for you, and in this case, it is. Now, that's not to say that the camera on this phone isn't great, but remember, the Mate 20 Pro, I mean, at this point, I don't really know because I'm making this video before its launch. It's apparently gonna adopt a lot of the camera attributes of a great camera on a smartphone, which is of the P20 Pro. So, I mean, obviously the Mate 10 Pro is going to be inferior to its successor's camera setup. So, I mean, image quality generally is pretty decent. I mean, especially in ideal conditions, but I think that the image quality sometimes looks a little over-processed. I mean, like, it looks like someone went into Lightroom and just cranked up clarity all the way and contrast and just kind of tried way too hard to make the photo look good. Also, I did notice that sometimes the images are not properly exposed, but thankfully this can be corrected with the Pro mode that they include, where you can adjust things like ISO and shutter speed, so that's a nice feature on their part. Video is also more than adequate, pretty decent in my opinion, especially at 4K. I mean, the focusing is nice, the OIS seems to be doing a great job, it's colorful, it's contrasty, etc., etc. But like, once again, is this camera's image quality, on par with like the XS Max, the iPhone 10, or the iPhone 8, or the Samsung Galaxy S8, S9, all the top dogs, Pixel 2? And the answer is no, I would highly doubt that. But that isn't a huge deal if you were thinking about keeping this phone or buying it for yourself this year or the next year. And to end on a more positive note, some features that I really do enjoy with this camera include focus tracking, which seems to do a great job if you're trying to keep an object in focus while your camera is moving quite a bit. There's also a smile to take a selfie mode, which I think is really creative and very useful if you're trying to take a quick selfie or take a group shot where you cannot quite press the shutter button. And lastly, there is a capability to take raw photos, which is great for any hobbyist or semi-professional photographer who is into buying this phone. And last, but certainly not least, let's talk about probably the most important aspect of a smartphone purchasing decision, and that has to do with software experience and performance. Now, let's remember this phone features one of the best processors of the past year. It's the Huawei Kirin 970, which is comparable to the Snapdragon 835. And on top of that, it's accompanied with a very respectable 6 GB of RAM. For a heavily skinned version of Android that is EMUI, this phone performs very admirably. I mean, everyday tasks can be executed very snappily and quickly. Gaming is enjoyable, especially with the aforementioned stereo speakers that I really do love. Multitasking is a breeze, especially with that 6 gigs of RAM, which allows you to keep multiple apps open without having to reload them. But with all that, you can't not expect occasional stutter or lag here and there. I mean, once again, like any heavily skinned version of Android, whether it's from Huawei, Xiaomi, Samsung, or LG, there's going to be some hiccups here and there because, I mean, they're straying from stock, which is, the best optimized version. In terms of user experience, I mean, the likability of EMUI kind of depends on your personal preference. And although I'm more of a stock Android kind of guy, and now as of recent an iOS guy, I really don't mind EMUI, and if I was forced to use it, I really wouldn't be that sad. I mean, the icons look nice, the user interface is similar to iOS in a lot of ways. Once again, it's quick, it's snappy, it doesn't look half bad. EMUI also features a lot of unique and useful features, which I did outline in my Mate 10 or Huawei oriented video that I posted in August, so watch that if you're interested. And the software experience that is EMUI, I mean, although it's not my personal favorite, I think anybody can learn to use it and actually grow to like it after a little while. So long story long, if you're in the market for a higher end Android smartphone without, upwards to $700, $800, $1,000 to spend, whether you are a Huawei patriot, whether you're an Android user, whether you're kind of ambiguous as to what user experience you want, I recommend checking out the Huawei Mate 10 and possibly dropping a cool $500 on it. And if you're a current Huawei Mate 10 user, say you're using the phone to watch this video right now, I mean, if the newer features aren't worth it to you, if the upgrade isn't substantial enough, I mean, the phone's still great and I recommend keeping it and waiting until next year. So that is the wrap up of my Huawei Mate 10 Pro late review. I hope this video helped you out in some way, and I would really appreciate it if you leave a like in the video, comment if you have any questions or suggestions, and subscribe for more content like this. And as always, I'm Noah, and I will catch you all in the next one.